Shame, shame, shame off you. So we're going to pick up right where we left off last week. And last week we left Annie and Tristan. Y'all remember Annie and Tristan when they were on stage? Oh man, yeah, they got a fan club. I love it. And last week we left Annie and Tristan divided and offended. Divided and offended. And we asked the question at the end of the sermon, sorry guys, I have my glasses on today. And I'm not used to it, and the lights are just bright in my eyes, and so work with me today, okay? We left off with the question, how do you heal a divide? So if you find yourself in a relationship and there's a massive divide, or there's an offense keeping you from one another, how do you heal that? Or how do you shrink the gap? How do you heal the hurts that have been caused by offense? It's a big deal. And really today, what we're going to talk about, I believe, is the offense to offense. The offense to offense is one simple word. It is forgiveness. Forgiveness. In fact, I want you to talk back to me today, okay? So on the count of 3, I want you to say forgiveness. All right, 1, 2, 3. Incredible, incredible. Wow. All right, forgiveness. There has to be more than a simple, if you're divided in a relationship, there has to be more than a simple, you are forgiven. I don't know what this is. What are the actions accompanying true forgiveness? How do we forgive? What does it take to forgive someone who has hurt you, who has wronged you, who has taken advantage of you? What is real forgiveness? And just as important, what is it not? Today, we're going to attempt to answer those questions because here's the reality. Here's what happens to you and happens to me when you live a life of separation, of unforgiveness in your relationships. When Annie and Tristan, they were separated, here's what happens. It ends up shackling you to unforgiveness. You end up getting shackled to shame. You and I, we end up getting shackled to the things in our life that we just won't let go of. We get shackled to the offenses, and what you thought would be hurtful to them has now become hurtful to you. The unforgiveness you thought that you were going to leash them in on, and you thought you were going to take them captive, has instead taken you captive. We've been discussing shame for the last few weeks, and today is the culmination of shame off you. Now, for many people here today, I would dare say, really all people here today, there is something in you that is shackling you. There's something in you that has the power to shackle you, to hold you back from the freedom of forgiveness. And for a long time, myself, I thought for a long time that if I would just extend forgiveness, I would experience freedom. That if I would forgive someone, then I would be better, I would feel better, and I would ultimately experience freedom. That'd be great. I would let it go. Somebody say, let it go. And move on. And I would remove the shackles from my heart. And the reality is that that's partially true, yeah. It's partially true that when you forgive them, you release them, you let them go, you move on. That's partially true. But there is just as much freedom when someone else forgives you as when you forgive them. When someone else comes along and lets you go, it's a two-way street. We have to learn to extend forgiveness to others, and we have to learn to receive forgiveness from others. In fact, I think there's 2 easy ways today that you can really discover if you are shackled to shame, if you are shackled to unforgiveness, if you got offense that is taking over and controlling your life and your experiences in your life. One of these 2 things may be true for you today. The first one is, you know that you might be shackled to shame if you always are hurting other people. When you are harboring hurt, you can't help but cause collateral damage. The old saying is so true. Hurt people hurt people. The chains that are on your heart, that are in your life, they're not just for you. They actually can impact and hurt and destroy those closest to you as well. Imagine you got chains on your arms and they're slinging around. You're going to cause collateral damage to the people that are closest to you. Why? Because you are harboring a hurt in you. Because I refuse to forgive the person that hurt us. It's one way that you can tell. Another way that you can tell is that you are always being hurt by other people. Hello. When you're always the victim, you're always hurt by somebody else. Everyone else is always the villain. You're always the one that's getting hurt. It might not be somebody else as much as it is you not forgiving them. We often think that we'll chain them up and we will control them and we will find freedom in making their life a living hell. And what happens is your life ends up being that. The longer you hold them, the more that happens. Now, we started this series looking at the life of Peter, and I think it's only appropriate that we end there with Peter as well. And Peter, this guy, he's always hurting people. He's always saying stuff. He's always saying dumb stuff. You know anybody that's always saying dumb stuff? Don't look at your spouse. Look straight ahead. You know anybody that, like Peter he's always putting his foot directly into his mouth. Always. Anybody else in the house? You're a Peter. You're always putting your foot in your mouth. Anybody. I am doing this almost every Sunday. I'm trying to be nice to somebody. I walk up, I'm like, hey, how long you been at Heart and Soul? Oh, great, yeah. Oh, y'all, this is a real story. Oh, y'all are together? Oh, are y'all dating? No, we're twins, actually. All right, incredible. They haven't been back. So, haven't. And Peter's always finding himself in these situations. He's always doing dumb stuff. So much so that the Lord Jesus Christ told Peter one time, get behind me, Satan. That's a good nickname. Can you imagine James and John like, Satan, you know? We think Jesus is just like meek and mild. He's like, nah, bro, you're Satan. Get behind me. Okay, Jesus, savage. Okay. And in Matthew chapter 18, we find this story where Peter, again, is just being a Peter. And he's asking Jesus a question that I think only a shackled person would ask. Only someone that is harboring unforgiveness or someone that is shackled to shame would ask. Matthew chapter 18, verse 21 and 22, it says this, then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother and sister when they sin against me? Up to 7 times, Lord? Now, we'll get back to that in just a second. Jesus answers, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. Now, Peter's going to Jesus and he's saying, should I forgive 7 times? And the best of the best in this day, the Pharisees, they would forgive up to 3 times. There was a limit. So Peter thinks, I'm gonna impress Jesus. Jesus, I'll do double that, 7. Yeah, and then Jesus turns around, and I'm not a mathematician, as some of you very clearly know. I'm not a mathematician, but 70 times 7 times is 490 times. That's a lot of times. In fact, you should clap that I got that right. That was incredible. Jesus says to forgive the same person over the same thing in the same day 490 times. Now, what is Jesus doing here? Is he saying at 490, that's the limit? No, that's not what Jesus is doing here. Jesus was not necessarily putting a number specifically on it. Jesus was instead taking it to such an extreme that it would be too high to ever even reach. Why? Why would Jesus do this? Because forgiveness is not about keeping score. Forgiveness is about losing count. It's not about keeping score of what your wife did. Hello. Or more likely, what your husband did. It's about losing count and forgiving anyway. It's about losing count and forgiving anyway. I don't know about you, but I am so dang excited and happy that the Lord Jesus Christ did not keep score against me. That's better than you thought. I'm glad that Jesus doesn't look at me and keeps a scorecard of all the terrible things I've done. Instead, he says, son, you're forgiven. You're forgiven. You're a new creation. It's a new day. Come on. Don't keep score, lose count. Now, today, my nose is tiny. It's the smallest nose known to man, okay? And my glasses, I'm just gonna keep doing this. Nothing to do with my sermon. I'm just gonna keep pushing them up, okay? Just wanted to get that out of the way. Anyway, we're talking about forgiveness, okay? Now, forgiveness. There's 4 main areas of forgiveness I wanna talk about today. 4 main areas. And what we're doing is we're doing like a flyover, okay? 30,000 foot view of forgiveness. And so we're not gonna go super in depth on probably any of these, but you need to know 4 main things, okay? If you're taking notes, please take notes. If you're not taking notes, please take notes. Write this stuff down because I think this can help you in your relationships, in your marriage, and in your workplaces, in your family, all across the board. Forgiveness. 4 things. What is forgiveness? What isn't forgiveness? How do I give forgiveness? And how do I receive forgiveness? If you're ready, say I'm ready. All right, let's go SpongeBob. Let's go SpongeBob. First, numero uno is how not to forgive. What forgiveness isn't. Now, I think this is so important today because there are a lot of false forgivenesses going around. It is especially popular in our culture and with people that you know and you call friend to misconstrue what true forgiveness is. But let me say unequivocally that these 4 that I'm about to give to you are not, N-O-T, not forgiveness. Write these down. Number 1, blame shifting. Blame shifting. So many of us, when we should forgive or we should ask for forgiveness, what many people do, especially today, is we instead shift the blame onto somebody else. Well, you know, they just weren't a good leader. Well, you know what? They were mean to me. If you knew how mean they were, you would understand. They hurt me more than you'll ever understand, Pastor. They. The more you shift the power and you shift the blame to them, the more power you give to them. Well, if they didn't, then I wouldn't. You know what you're doing? You are shackling yourself to them. When you shift the blame from yourself, no matter you had 1% to do with it or 99%, when you shift the blame from instead of giving out forgiveness or accepting forgiveness and you shift it over to somebody else's responsibility, you also give up what forgiveness could free you of. You get shackled. Don't keep score, lose count. Forgive anyway. Blame shifting. Number 2, self-pity. Many of us believe that we are sorry for something because we feel bad for it. But sometimes the self-pity isn't feeling sorry, it's just self-pity. See, often we feel sorry for what we did. We feel sorry for the sin. We feel sorry for getting caught in it, not necessarily what we did. Look no further than your kids. Hello. My kids, bro. I can talk about him because he left the service. Come on, somebody. My son Cash, my man, I'm telling you, He gets sorry, he'll just start crying, and he doesn't even remember what he did that was wrong. He just feels bad about getting caught. And we carry that into grown-uphood as well. We carry that into our life as well, where we don't want to forgive or be forgiven as much as we just want to feel sorry about getting caught. You can't be forgiven of something that you're not repentant of. Self-pity doesn't help with that. The third one is self-loathing. You know, what these all have in common is the self. Hello. Self-loathing. That's very popular today. I'll just play the victim so much that they feel bad for me, and they feel so bad for me that they will stop holding me accountable for anything. I'll beat myself up. And when I beat myself up, then y'all will feel sorry for me, and I won't have to take responsibility for my life. Self-loathing is shackling you to unforgiveness. You will never feel free when you are constantly loathing over what you don't have or what they have over you. Never. You will never find freedom in that. Fourth thing, and this one isn't as much as an antithesis to forgiveness as it is something that I think in our culture today, we don't understand how these things fit together. It's anti-justice. I think what a lot of people think today is if I forgive them, then they won't receive justice. If I forgive them, then they won't get what they deserve. Aren't you glad that Jesus Christ didn't give you what you deserve? I am. On June 17th, 2015, a young man entered Emmanuel African American Episcopal Church. He shot and he killed 9 people that day. The daughter of the 70-year-old victim, Ethel Lance, said this, and I quote, "I will never talk to her ever again. I will never be able to hold her ever again. But I forgive you. I forgive you." See, the perpetrator, the one who deserves justice, he was not released on the day that he was forgiven. In fact, he will never be released, ever. The forgiveness he received from the victims' families did not forsake the justice that would come forth. Let me read this quote from Dr. Tim Keller. He says it this way: "If you don't internally forgive first, then when you go out to seek justice, you will more likely be out for vengeance than justice." It is not anti-justice to forgive. If you do not precede justice with forgiveness, you will end up shackling yourself to what was done against you or those that you love. Unforgiveness will shackle you. So, if this is what forgiveness isn't, then what is forgiveness? What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is a couple things. First is there's this Greek word, and it's been a while since I took Greek in seminary, and so bear with me for a moment, okay, to pronounce this. Aphemi, okay? This is to forgive. Another way to say this is when it's talking about forgiveness, it's talking about release, to release them. And we often won't forgive them because we think we're holding them captive when the reality is we're the ones being held captive. It's counterintuitive. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 14 says this: "In Jesus, we have redemption." That's good news. You have redemption. That means you can be made new. You're a new creature. You have a new beginning. You have a new day. Your life can start over when you are redeemed by Jesus. That is great news today. Why do we call the gospel, why is the gospel good news? It's good news because you once were lost and now you're found. It's good news because while you couldn't, Jesus could. That's what makes it good. Then it continues on. It says, the forgiveness, the releasing of sin. The release of sin. Forgiveness is about releasing others and being released by others. It's taking them off the chain, taking them off the leash, releasing them. Forgiveness is about removing the shackles of shame from your heart, removing the hurts of those that hurt you, removing the pains of the past. See, the reality today is that we forgive. Why? Because we've been forgiven. We don't forgive just so that we can feel better in our own mind. We forgive because Jesus forgave us. That's why we forgive. As a Christian, as a little Christ, as we follow Christ, we do as Christ did. He has forgiven us, so we forgive them. He has released us, so we release them. Listen to me, church. I know that you've gone through some stuff. I know you got a bunch of stuff in your past. I know somebody hurt you, and you don't feel like you can ever forgive them. And I want to be careful here, but I want to be honest with you. The reality today is that no matter what kind of hurt you have in your past, you weren't as hurt as Jesus was on the cross. That doesn't downplay your hurt, but it does show what Jesus went through, and yet he forgives. He forgives. See, we forgive for two main reasons. Number one, we forgive because it honors God. It honors God. It honors God when we obey him. That honors God. He's asked us to forgive, so we forgive. The second reason we forgive is because, like I said, Jesus has forgiven us. And when Jesus has forgiven us, it gives us permission and authority to forgive somebody else. Changes our hearts. So, this is forgiveness. Those others are not forgiveness. So how do we give forgiveness to other people? How would we give it? Because I don't know about y'all, but I want to receive forgiveness. Anybody else want to receive forgiveness when you mess up? A few people, okay. The rest of y'all are liars, so you need to be forgiven. All of us want to receive forgiveness. But in order to receive forgiveness, I think we ought to first look at how to give it. Because we're really good at getting stuff, but not always great at giving it. How do we give forgiveness? See, the reality today is just because you have been forgiven or just because you forgive someone else does not mean that you forget. You're not God. You will carry those scars sometimes the rest of your life. But there's a difference between the scars of forgiveness and living in the shackles of unforgiveness. See, forgiveness, again, it's not about keeping score. It's about losing count. It's kind of like checklists. Do we have any people in the house like you love checklists? You love a good to-do list. Let me hear from you. Okay, all right. About like last service. Okay. All right, who here is an anti-checklist person? Anti-to-do list. Yep. Tristan is the loudest and proudest anti-to-do list person. What a guy, man. So y'all get nothing done, right? Like y'all are the people that go to the grocery store without a list and you buy the entire cereal section. That's all you get. No milk. You don't know what you're doing. You're just getting food. Like, I don't know how you do it. Anyway, checklists. Here's the deal. Some of y'all will not keep a checklist or a to-do list to save your life to be organized. But all of us, every single one of us, we will keep a checklist, a scorecard in our mind of people that have wronged us. 2002, 6th grade, 3rd period. She stole my pencil, never gave it back. So dumb. In fact, I went through and I wrote down a few different areas that we keep checklists on people so you can kind of relate it back to your life as well. I threw it up here. We got our wife. If you're married in the house, let me hear from you. Y'all sounded like, all the single people are like, do we want to get married? Jeez, all right, guys, anytime I say something about marriage, that's your chance to put your arm, Joel, around your wife, give her a little kiss on the cheek. That's it, because we are in church, and get a few brownie points. Okay, so here's what we do. We'll keep a checklist, all right? Like, this is a wife, okay? When she sided with her mom, ooh, child. Now, my in-laws are backslidden. They don't love Jesus anymore, and they're not at church today, so I can talk whatever I want about my mother-in-law. She's watching online. I love you, Sharon. But you know what? Sarah took her mom's side. Ooh, child. Another one, didn't say sorry. Now, for us, it's switched. Sarah always says sorry, like quick, and it's over. It takes me about 8 years. Another one, this is one of my favorites, is she had a headache. And then she had another headache. And so much so that, man, you know, your boy's trying to make a doctor's appointment. Like, is my wife okay having so many headaches? We can take offense. Let's move on to the next one. We got some friends. Your friend stole your girlfriend. Mr. Steal your girl. You can't ever, I write him off in my black book. It's over. Didn't like my photo. Some of y'all do this. You know you do it. You go on Facebook. You see, Sarah Coleman liked so-and-so's photo. You go and look at your photo, and you look at your likes. Why didn't Sarah like my photo? She doesn't like my kid? Yeah. I'm like, bro, calm down. Like, anyway, you write off people. And then didn't invite me to the party. Woo! You know, you suck the life out of every party you go to. You don't even like that party. You don't want to be at that party. They didn't invite you to that party, and you write them off as quick as you possibly can. We keep checklists. You know, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, what does that say? Love keeps no record of wrongs. Hello. We're good at keeping checklists, though. Last one is the coworker. When your coworker drinks the last coffee. Ooh, that really grinds my gears. When Tristan drinks the last coffee. Or worse yet, like you make a pot of coffee and then they drink all the coffee and then they don't clean up after themselves. Like, well, these people were raised in a barn. What's happening here? You got some other stuff. They lied about you. They blamed you for something that you didn't deserve. They stole your joke or your idea. This happens all the time with Annie and Tristan. Annie, she slept on, man. She's funny. And so she'll say something, and she's like more soft-spoken, so she'll say something really funny. But no one will hear it in the group. And then Tristan, the loudest person in this room, Tristan will then take that joke and say the exact same thing, word for word. And everyone's like, that guy's hilarious. And Annie is just side-eyeing him with unforgiveness in her heart. And he made her checklist all over again. And here's the deal, though. Here's the deal. So many of us, we keep trying to get to church, and we keep trying to get right, and we keep trying to read our Bible. We keep trying to raise our hands. We keep trying to worship and get right and get better and be better. And you don't feel like you're growing spiritually because you have the wrong equation. When you get here, you think, man, I'm not growing like I thought I could. But the reality is that Jesus said that if you got something against your brother or sister, drop it at the altar. Before you worship me, go get it right with them. You ought to keep a checklist of all the people you have something against and all the people that you went and apologized to. Keep that checklist. See, let me give you some context, biblical background on this Matthew chapter 6 where Jesus says this. When Jesus says that you ought to drop it at the altar and you ought to go to the person, just so you know, some of these people were coming from upwards of 80 miles away. They would come once a year to make their sacrifices, the temple. And Jesus says, you made your 80-mile trek, your 2-week trek, and you got here, and then you remembered, oh man, Garfunkel back in Bethlehem. I forgot I had something against old Garfunkel. Jesus says, before you worship, before you praise, before you offer sacrifice, drop it at the altar. Hey, priest, can you keep a watch over my little lamb? Don't let anybody steal my sacrifice. Keep a watch on it. Put it in layaway. And I'm going to go back 80 miles to apologize to Garfunkel. Now, Jesus takes it to a whole nother level. Seemingly, Jesus makes the horizontal relationships in our life as important or more important than the worship to him. You got a problem with somebody else, before you start worshiping God, go to them. You want to grow spiritually? Go to them. You want to grow in your life relationally? Go to them, apologize to them, seek forgiveness from them, and see what God doesn't start to do in your life. Because forgiveness has to be extended before it's ever experienced. You're never going to say, oh, you know what? I woke up this morning feeling real forgiving. Can't wait to go and forgive that person that harmed me. Nope. You wake up and say, I hate that person. I don't like that person. I don't want to see that person, but I'm going to forgive them anyway because Jesus forgave me much. I'm going to forgive much. The formula is Matthew chapter 6, verse 14. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. I want to ask you a question. Think about how many times God has forgiven you. 3 times? 7? 70 times 7? A million? A squillion? I'll tell you when. He's forgiven you every single time. And we follow Jesus. And we do what Jesus does. And even when we don't feel like it, we forgive anyway. How do you give forgiveness? You give it freely. But how do you receive forgiveness? How do you receive it? A couple things. First, you have to confess. Somebody say confess. Confess. This is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But this is, I'm sorry with no buts. You know, this is what I do. I'm really bad at this. I'm sorry I said that and it was hurtful, but if you wouldn't have been so dumb. Confess, I'm sorry with no but. See, anything after the but negates everything before it. The reality is the bigger your but, I'm sorry but, the bigger your but, the smaller your forgiveness. Yep. So today, if you got a big butt, you need to go work it out. Come on, somebody. You need to work it out. You got a big butt, you need to go work it out. You need to work that butt out of your conversations. No more, I'm sorry, but. It's just, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Work that butt out. Because the more that you're feeding yourself unforgiveness, the bigger your butt is going to get. The more you're feeding yourself fried chicken, hello, the more your physical butt is going to grow. It's the same exact thing. Got to confess. But second, you got to forsake. Forsake. This is making a full renunciation. This is the repent side of forgiveness. It's replacing the but with an and. I'm sorry, and I will not do X, Y, and Z again. It's a complete turnaround. Repent in Scripture, it's an about face. So I'm facing this way, and I'm facing myself and my own likes and my own desires and my own loves. And I say, God, would you forgive me of my sin? I'm going to turn away from myself. I'm going to turn towards you, and I'm going to follow you forward. See, this is where you get to join in on the justice. Forgiveness and justice go hand in hand. You've been forgiven, and now I get to participate in the justice, in making things right. Number 3 is receive it, quickly. Receive it. Receive it. This is a big one for Christians. Receive it, don't work for it. If you have to work for it, it's not forgiveness, it's not grace, it's manipulation. Receive it, change from it. If you're forgiven, live like it. If you're forgiven, live like it. Don't creep around in the shadows feeling like everything you do. Man, if you're forgiven, live like it. So many Christians, they are forgiven, they give their life to Christ, they're saved, they're changed, they get the grace, and then they decide, oh, thanks God for getting me out of hell, but now it's my turn to take over. Thanks God for forgiving me of all my past sins, but I got it from here. No. If you're forgiven, live like it. Live in the forgiveness and the freedom offered through Jesus. It's the only place you can get it. There's freedom in forgiveness. There's shackles in shame. See, the reality and the problem for most of us is that you cannot give what you do not have. And you don't have what you have not received. If you're not forgiving others, you're not free. You're shackling yourself. You think you're holding them back, but you're holding you back. You may not be forgiving them because you've not yet experienced forgiveness yourself. And maybe you can't forgive them because you can't forgive you. And you think, if I don't deserve forgiveness, then they sure don't deserve forgiveness. The hardest person that you or I will ever forgive is not your ex, it's not your neighbor, it's not your estranged family member, it's not your mom or your dad or that person that hurt you at that church. That's not the hardest person to forgive. The hardest person to forgive in my life and in yours is us. Is accepting that I can be forgiven too. That yes, I screwed up. Yes, I made a mess. Yes, I did all the things wrong in my life up until this point. But man, I believe Jesus can forgive me. And if Jesus can forgive me, then I can forgive them. I can forgive me if Jesus can forgive me. Can you forgive you? See, we got a lot of people walking around wounded. Wounded. And what Jesus does when he forgives you is he heals the wound and he leaves the scar. A lot of people here, you've been wounded, but you've not yet been healed. Because instead of forgiving them, instead of accepting forgiveness, you have tried to do it on your own, and you keep opening up the wounds of your heart. You keep opening up the wounds in your life, the way that they've hurt you. You keep harboring bitterness over it. You keep harboring hurt over it, and it gets bigger and it gets worse the longer it goes without someone fixing it. Forgiveness is it's healing. It's freedom. It doesn't take away the scars. It's not plastic surgery. It leaves the scars. But the scars are what God uses in you. The scars are what God uses in me to reach somebody that is going through the same wounding right now. Somebody needs to see the scars that you have. Why do I tell stories sometimes that make me look stupid or dumb, or like maybe I'm being a little dramatic sometimes? But why do I do that? I do that because you don't need to see my plastic surgery. You need to see my scars. We need to see somebody else's life and say, you know what? Me too. Me too. Your scars do that. Why did Jesus? He showed up right after he was resurrected. He showed up to doubting Thomas, and Thomas, he didn't believe that Jesus rose again. And Jesus comes up and he says, put your hands in my scars. In my scars. And Thomas believed. Why? Because he saw his scars. The scars in your life from your divorce, the scars in your life from the finances, the scars in your life from your kids, the scars in your life from the suicides that you've been a part of, that you saw happen in your family, the scars in your life, they are being used and can be used to help show somebody else Jesus. That's what the scars are for. That's what the scars are for. That's when a woman gets pregnant. We've got a bunch of pregnant people in the house. Sorry, pregnant women in the house. Men don't get pregnant. Women get pregnant. And when you get pregnant, though, you get stretch marks. What are the stretch marks? The stretch marks show signs of new life. It's signs of new life. The scars on you and in you, they're signs of new life. The signs of healing. If you could be healed by Jesus, so can they. If I can be healed, so can you. He brings forgiveness. That's what Jesus does for me and for you. With every head bowed and every eye closed.